Well, we're not in the bar. Can we talk about writing when we're not in the bar?
Well, where do the ideas come from? What's the genesis of what you're writing? How does that happen? Do you sit at the keyboard and wait for lightning to strike, or do you have um, a little a little tickle of an idea floating around before you sit down? And how often does that get changed? How does that morph into something else? So we could talk about any of that.
Well, I think the first thing of what you said that interests me is the idea of the genesis of the story. I mean, I do have a routine for getting started and stopping. We can talk about that too. But with regard to the genesis of a story, uh, for me, it's like scratching an itch. It's like an impulse that rises up within me that wants my attention and kind of demands my attention. And often I feel like it's something that is seeking a place of greater repose. And so sometimes I already have an itch. And I'm assuming this is before a story begins. But if I have that itch, I really don't know much about what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. But I'll just sit down with that itch and I'll begin. And without a plan, without a character sketch or a synopsis or a timeline, and I'll just see where it goes. And it's like following my nose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how about for you in a poem?
Yeah, usually I have a phrase or a title, a first line, or an overheard conversation, um, some little spark that that brings me to the keyboard. But often that changes pretty early.
Well, what do you mean? How does it change?
Well, usually start longhand. I usually start with a favorite fountain pen and a sketch pad and write out the phrase or the idea. And then when it kind of starts coming together, I'll move to the keyboard. And often at that point, it goes in another direction. So the poem wants to go somewhere else. The words want to go somewhere else. So the phrase still might be in there, but it will go in a different direction than I anticipated it happening. And sometimes there's nothing there, and it dies a quiet death, and I let it go. Or there's something that's percolating and fermenting, and I'll just diddle around with it, put it on there, put it on the keyboard, put it on the screen, move the words around, migrate, plug some in here, plug some in there. Maybe a phrase from something I did a week or two ago will pop into my mind, and I'll put that in. And maybe that will be in concert with what I'm thinking about, and maybe not. And sometimes we'll go in a different direction. And I'm not even an explorer. I'm kind of a collaborator with what's coming through, and it surprises me sometimes. And then once in a while, there'll be a phrase or a line that's just like a bolt of lightning. And I'm not that smart. I know it came from somewhere else. I know that line that just resonates is I'm tuned into something other than me producing it, and that's one of the great joys of writing for me.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It's not really. I don't feel like I'm particularly smart. I just feel like things come through me, and then I just kind of follow them. And the I find the story as it tells itself to me. Um, but it sounds like with poetry, it can be a word or a phrase. And with me, the genesis often is connected in some way to either some kind of past experience. Um, and if it is a past experience, it's just a spring because I'm not interested in recording things the way they happen. It's just a starting point. And then, you know, it may be a character in a situation, but then I just let it go wherever it wants to go. And I find that if I do that, that I'm accessing other experiences that come in that are somehow connected or similar that will enrich the story. And sometimes it's not really even an actual event or an experience. Sometimes it's even a fantasy or an imagination that I've been carrying around. And if it's been there for a while, kind of gnawing at me, that's what I mean by the itch that needs to be
Yeah.
scratched.
Yeah.
And then I just go for it. But it's not like a single word. It has some of the nebulous qualities of a situation that wants to be explored. So maybe that's one of the differences between poetry and story.